Hello everyone, I'm Carthu, and today we're discussing whether or not the Saiyans can be revived. One of the most requested what ifs I receive is what if the Saiyans were revived, or what if Bardock was revived, or what if Gine was revived, etc. But the validity of those what ifs entirely depend on one thing. Is it even possible for the Saiyans to be revived? Let's answer that today. When most people ask for this what if, they usually refer to the modern series as the time this would take place, so let's use that as a jumping off point. That would mean it's been over 40 years since planet Vegeta has been wiped out. But why is that length of time significant? Well, it is and it isn't. You see, as we found out in the Saiyan saga, Goku was a special case in the afterlife, being allowed to keep his body as well as train with King Kai. This isn't common, as most souls are just that, souls. There are other cases where people get to keep their bodies, but they have to be an exceptionally good person to achieve this. For those that don't remember or just didn't know, the Otherworld Tournament arc that takes place in between the Cell and Buu sagas is completely filler, so don't let that taint your vision of the afterlife. Fast forward to the Buu saga and we have an interesting development. Vegeta is told by Piccolo, who has the knowledge of Kami of course, that he will not keep his body in the afterlife. Instead, his soul will be purged of its memories and he will be reincarnated into a new body. After this, we are later shown the scene of Enma giving Vegeta a new body, and specifically saying that he is glad he kept Vegeta's spirit intact. Don't forget that Vegeta's body was destroyed when sacrificing himself. This concept will be a little bit more important later on though. The Buu saga is famously short as well, at least in terms of Dragon Ball time, not real world time. Despite it being many chapters and episodes, the whole thing takes place over the course of a few days at most. This would mean that a soul purging should only take a couple of days, but we could give a more generous buffer zone. You see, Frieza is revived for a single day during the Tournament of Power. The only reason his soul hasn't been cleansed is because he's powerful and evil enough to resist the purging. This is also why Frieza is in a special hell during Resurrection of F, the movie and the arc. This is where we get the generous soul purging estimate. In this case, Frieza died in age 764 when future Trunks arrived in the present and was still in his personal hell till age 779, a whole 15 years of attempted soul purging. So the low end is a couple of days and the high end is 15 years, but herein lies our first issue with reviving the Saiyans. Their souls, even at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z when Goku finds out he's a Saiyan, are 10 years past that maximum reincarnation limit that we just established using Frieza, who's an extremely special case as far as we know. We've never had a resurrection occur for a soul that was already purged and reincarnated, and without killing the reincarnation, I can't see how it's possible for that to occur at all. Unfortunately, we also have another issue on our hands: the Saiyans' bodies. As we've seen multiple times over, the Saiyans were completely disintegrated by Frieza's destruction of planet Vegeta, meaning their bodies were no more than space dust when all was said and done. And even if there were some pieces of bodies floating around, the vacuum of space would have ripped them all of liquids and gases until eventually they expanded and shriveled into an unrecognizable mess. They wouldn't decompose at least without oxygen, so they have that going for them. Either way, this issue remains because of what Shenron said at the beginning of the Resurrection of F arc, when Sorbet is attempting to revive Frieza.
That being's body was torn apart long ago, and cannot be restored.
Once again, time is a massive issue here. Frieza was killed 15 years before this wish by Sorbet was made, so even if we claim the wish for the Saiyans to be revived was made at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, when the Saiyans were first introduced as a concept, the Saiyans would still be dead for 25 years. meaning there's no way for Shenron to restore their bodies based on his own logic and what he says about his own powers. So this seemingly leaves us in a pretty concrete place. Their bodies can't be restored, and their souls should have been reincarnated by now. Pretty set in stone, right? Well, maybe not. There's one possible exception, or workaround, that I can think of, and that's the use of the Super Dragon Balls. The Super Dragon Balls are fabled to have no limits in terms of wish-granting potential. I would classify that as in-series mythology rather than being actual lore that we could take as serious fact, as the regular Dragon Balls were spoken about in the very same way originally. However, they should be as strong as their creator, Zalama, which in itself doesn't really say much, but we can further extrapolate that the two Zenos believe the Super Dragon Balls can grant any wish. This should, emphasis on should as this isn't definitive by any measure, mean that the Super Dragon Balls exceed the power of Zeno, or at least match it, as they can grant any wish within the scope of Zeno. We know that there are gods of creation in the Kais who create planets for mortal life to flourish on. So long as Super Shenron exceeds their power, he should be strong enough to duplicate souls and reform bodies, or so I'd assume. Overall, the Earth Dragon Balls would probably be unable to resurrect the Saiyan race, or even just Goku's parents due to the lack of bodies and souls. And even the Namekian Dragon Balls can't resurrect large groups of people anyway, so they're out from the start for resurrecting the entire species. But when it comes to Bardock and Gine, the same thing applies. No bodies and souls, I don't see how that works for the Namekian Dragon Balls if it doesn't for Earth's. However, there is a chance that the Super Dragon Balls could perform this wish. This does allow the storyline to remain open-ended when writing future arcs, but personally, I prefer some things in Dragon Ball to remain dead. Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit the like button, leave your opinions and counterpoints in the comments down below, and hit subscribe and the notification bell. That way you get to stay up to date on the channel and everything that goes on with it. If you're interested, please check out the merch store to support the channel in another way that gives you something in return. But till next time, peace!